Russia's economic collapse. Putin's desperate military cuts in Ukraine war. As the Ukraine war grinds into its fourth year in 2030, President Vladimir Putin stares into a financial abyss. What he envisioned as a swift conquest in February 2022 has spiraled into an economic catastrophe, costing Russia an estimated $350 to $400 billion by July 1st, 2030, with his economy on the brink of collapse. Putin faces a grim dilemma: drastically cut spending or watch Russia implode. On June 27, 2030, the Telegraph reported Putin's announcement to slash military budgets, a desperate move at a critical juncture in the war. Speaking at a Minsk press conference, he vaguely outlined plans to reduce defense spending next year and the year after over the next 3-year period. Putin spun this as a counter to NATO's push, led by U.S. President Donald Trump, for member states to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP. He accused NATO of aggressive actions, claiming their spending fuels the U.S. military-industrial complex, while deflecting from his own war-driven economy. Who is preparing for aggression? Us or them, he asked, a brazen question from a leader waging a prolonged invasion that has ravaged both Ukraine and Russia's economic stability. Putin's hypocrisy and overspending. Putin's rhetoric masks a stark hypocrisy. In September 2029, Reuters reported Russia planned a 25% military spending hike for 2030, allocating $160 billion, 33% of its total budget and 6.5% of GDP, surpassing NATO's 5% benchmark. This reversed an earlier projection of 21%, underscoring Putin's refusal to scale back a war meant to last days, but now stretching into years. Russian analyst Pavel Luzin, writing for the Center for European Policy Analysis, CEPA, in January 2030, labeled 2030 the year of Russia's runaway military budget. In 2029, Russia overshot its $110 billion defense plan, likely reaching $140 billion, a trend of overspending since 2022. Luzin's data shows military expenditure has tripled since 2021, fueling a military-industrial complex that's drained Russia's reserves. A Moscow economist, speaking anonymously, said, Putin bet everything on victory. Now the bill is due and we're broke. This reckless escalation, driven by Putin's refusal to admit defeat, has pushed Russia toward economic ruin. Economic warnings ignored. Warnings of this crisis have been loud and clear. In June 2030, Russia's Minister of Economic Development, Maxim Reshetnikov, admitted the country is on the brink of recession, per the Telegraph. Central Bank Governor Elvira Nabiullina reinforced this, stating, "Our resources are exhausted after 2 years of high growth." Russia's 4.3% GDP growth in 2029, outpacing the U.S.'s 2.8% and UK's 1.1%, per the BBC, was a mirage fueled by military spending. Beneath the surface, rampant inflation and soaring interest rates cripple ordinary Russians. Inflation hit 9.9% in May 2030, down slightly from 10.2% in April, with food prices surging 12.5% and fruits and vegetables skyrocketing 19.8%. Non-food items rose 4.8%, services 12.6%. A St. Petersburg shopkeeper, Maria, lamented, "A loaf of bread costs what a meal did last year. My customers can't afford to live." The Insider reported in November 2029 that Russia underreported poverty, claiming 13.3 million affected, while the true figure likely hit 15 to 19 million, with families struggling for basics like clothing and medicine. Interest rates, peaking at 21% in October 2029 before dropping to 20% in June 2030, deepen the crisis. CEPA's Alexander Colliander told Central Banking this cut is a minor tweak, not relief, as inflation remains entrenched. Western sanctions, 24,311 by 2030, per Castellum to AI, dwarfing those on Iran or Syria, have spiked import costs. France's CPI notes Russia pays 21% more for goods from non-sanctioning partners like China compared to 2020 to 2024, with military goods costing 122% more. These nations exploit Russia's isolation, inflating prices for critical supplies. A Russian importer in Vladivostok confessed, We're overpaying for everything. China knows we have no choice. The Jamestown Foundation warns Russia's growth is unsustainable, and any peace deal with Ukraine will expose Putin's fiscal mismanagement, laying bare the Kremlin's economic failures. Labor shortages and military losses. The crisis extends beyond finances to a crippling labor shortage. Moscow's Higher School of Economics reported a 2.6 million worker deficit by late 2029, per RBC Ukraine. The Kyiv Independent details shortages in key sectors. Manufacturing lacks 391,000 workers, trade 347,000, and transportation 219,000. Employers offer wages 1.5 times the $1,200 monthly average, but 20% wage hikes in 2029 are erased by inflation. Low unemployment. 61% of Russians over 15 are employed, hides the truth. There aren't enough workers. Novaya Gazeta noted in October 2029 that Russia needs 3 million migrant workers, but economic instability and a devalued ruble deter them. A Tashkent labor recruiter said, "Nobody wants to work in Russia now. The ruble's worthless, and the war scares them off." The biggest blow is military losses. The Guardian reported 1 million soldier casualties by June 22, 2030. With Ukraine claiming 1,220 daily losses. A wounded soldier, Dmitry, wrote from a Donetsk hospital, "I lost my leg for nothing. Half my unit is gone." Military salaries and strategic failures. Military salaries exacerbate the strain. The Conversation reports Russian soldiers earn $2,034 monthly, plus signing bonuses and family benefits, placing them in the top 10% of earners. With 580,000 troops in Ukraine as of November 2029, per the Telegraph, and daily losses requiring replacements, this is a massive drain. A Kremlin budget analyst, speaking off record, said, "We're paying soldiers more than doctors, but we can't keep up." Putin's cuts signal he can't sustain this. Reducing troop numbers risks failing to replace losses, while cutting equipment, like the outdated T-62 tanks flooding Ukraine, weakens soldiers' effectiveness. Russia's summer 2030 offensive in Sumy and Donetsk has faltered, with only minor gains like a lithium deposit in Donetsk, per the Kyiv Post. Ukraine's drone strikes, costing Russia $10 billion, target tanks, air bases, and infrastructure, exploiting these weaknesses. A Ukrainian drone operator in Kharkiv, called Sign Spectre, said, "Their tanks are relics. One drone and they're done." Social and economic fallout. Russia's future darkens further. Banking officials warn of an impending crisis, as businesses unable to hire face insolvency. High interest rates choke growth, and 140,000 returning veterans, half unemployed, strain society. The Telegraph notes Russia lacks res-killing programs, leaving veterans like Alexei, a 25-year-old from Rostov, jobless. "I survived Ukraine, but now I'm useless here." If peace arrives, 580,000 more troops could return, overwhelming a system unprepared to integrate them. The funeral industry, up 12.7% in profits from January to April 2030, thrives amid the carnage, but other sectors buckle. A Cottenberg factory owner said, "I can't find workers, and loans are killing me." Bankruptcies next. Inflation and sanctions erode purchasing power, with families like Olga's and Novosibirsk cutting meals to afford rent. "We're starving to pay the bills," she said. Geopolitical implications. Putin's cuts aren't a sign of de-escalation, but of desperation. His war has gutted Russia's economy, and Ukraine's relentless pressure, through drone strikes and battlefield victories, widens a wound. NATO's increased spending strengthens Ukraine's arsenal, with U.S.-supplied javelins and UK Storm Shadow missiles decimating Russian forces. A NATO official remarked, "Putin's running out of money and options. Ukraine's outlasting him." The Kremlin's narrative of strength crumbles as Russia resorts to Cold War-era tanks and faces labor shortages. Any peace deal will expose Putin's mismanagement, potentially sparking domestic unrest. A Moscow protester, risking arrest, whispered, "He's bankrupted us for this war. We want our lives back." The road ahead. Putin's military cuts are a band-aid on a hemorrhaging economy. Inflation, sanctions, labor shortages, and military losses paint a grim picture. Ukraine's momentum, fueled by innovative drone warfare and Western support, ensures Russia's losses mount. Putin's dismissal, rumors of my economy's death are greatly exaggerated, rings hollow against the reality of a nation buckling under its own ambition. As Ukraine holds firm, Russia's collapse looms closer, with Putin's war exposing his country's fragility. What do you think? Can Putin's cut save Russia, or is Ukraine's resilience too strong? Share below and check our coverage on Ukraine's drone warfare or Russia's battlefield struggles for deeper insights.